Here's to you, dear listeners, and welcome to Metal Gear Mondays, the most thorough Kojima-themed podcast on the internet. I am your host, Sam Wright, and we're back. It's been a little bit, but we have another interview episode today, which we're very excited about. It's our first Death Stranding themed interview. We hope to get several more people from the game on the show, but we're starting off our interviews of this game with a bang. By talking to Mr. Tommie Earl Jenkins, Die-Hardman himself. But of course, I can't do it by myself. I've got somebody here with me who was also on the episode asking the hard-hitting questions, and that is Mr. Chris Hampton.
Yes, that's right, Sam. We're trying to get the truth. The cold, hard truth.
The truth. We had a really, really good time talking to Tommie on this episode. Super cool. Super cool dude. Super cool cat.
And some of the little bits of information that Tommie shares with us are just going to blow your mind. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. Guarantee it. You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. We spend a lot of time talking about like his path to acting. He's a super like multi-pronged threat in that way because he does voice work. He acts on screen. He's a dancer. He's a theater actor. He's done music, but like he's got so many facets to him. And it was just great talking to him about those things and then getting some insight into the process of Death Stranding and what it was like being on set and working with Hideo Kojima and what motion capture the process was like and all that really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, Tommie Earl Jenkins is the full Arsenal gear.
The full Arsenal gear. We do mention at the end of the interview where you can kind of find Tommie on the internet, but we'll bring it up top just so you know. Follow him on Twitter. It is at TJ84. That's TEEJAYE 84 on the Twitters. You can also follow him on Instagram at Tommie_Earl_Jenkins official, and he is also on Facebook and various other things. He is such a the reason why I wanted to reach out to him in the first place was because he's such a he comes across on his social media as a very warm, very inviting to the fans kind of person, and he seemed very easy to approach in that way, and that definitely translates directly into speaking with him and having the chance to talk to him. So please give him a follow on his various social medias, and just watch what he does next because he's a great talent. And I'll talk about our stuff really quick at the top. You can go to metalgearmondays.com and see all of our social media there as well. Again, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those cool things. We have our merch store, bit.ly/MGM store, which is really cool. And then we have patreon.com/metalgearmondays. If you care to support monetarily, we would always appreciate that. We have tiers from $1 all the way up. So check it out and see what strikes your fancy, and all those other cool things. And then as always, you can always go on Apple Podcasts or other podcast apps to review us if you so choose, which would also appreciate very much. Chris, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at Chris Hampton II. That's Chris Hampton II on Twitter and Instagram. PSN is proto_dude. Xbox is just proto dude, I think. LinkedIn.
Try them both.
If you're ever in the Shelby Hills neighborhood of Nashville, just come look me up. Grab a beer.
Come find me. And you can find me on the internet on Twitter at Sanjul. That's SANJUUL. I did get this question the other day. No, my name has nothing to do with Jules, but I appreciate your candor. And then you could also find me on, I have a YouTube channel that I sporadically do videos on at bit.ly/Sam Does a Thing. And then my PSN is Deadpool Alpha. Feel free to add me on there as well. And I think that's it, Chris, unless you had anything else crazy you wanted to drop, any bombshells.
Oh, there is a Death Stranding update.
Is there?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
It's added Santa hats to everyone in the game.
Yes. Excellent. Perfect. Excellent.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So without further ado, this is going to be our last release of 2019. In a couple of days, as you're hearing this, it's going to be brand new year. So Happy New Year. We'll see you in the new year pretty soon after it starts. Once our little vacay is over. And yeah, let's talk to Tommie Earl Jenkins.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's it been, Sam? 10 years? Look at us. A bunch of deathless freaks meeting like this. Yeah, well, good to see you two.
We have here Tommie Earl Jenkins, Die-Hardman himself. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Absolutely. A pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, man.
Absolutely. We're really excited to talk to you. This is we've had a few interviews with some cast members of different Hideo Kojima games in the past, but this is our first Death Stranding.
Uh-huh.
So we are honored that you are our first Death Stranding interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I kind of wanted to kick us off because you are from Canton, Ohio, correct?
I am. Yes, I was born in Canton, Ohio. Yes, I was.
So several of the voice talents we've had on the show so far are from the Midwest and specifically Ohio. And being from Ohio myself, I wonder if you have any thoughts on why so many actors come from that area of the country.
In all honesty, I don't really know, aside from the fact that they're probably the most talented. But
Something in the water.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's funny because when I was living in New York and working, I ran into so many actors who were from Ohio in New York. And I don't know why that is. I don't honestly know. I just think it is, maybe it's just coincidence. And having said that, there are a lot of talented people who come from the Midwest, and Ohio is one of those places. It's funny, you know. I just think it's just a coincidence, I think. But like I said, everyone who does come and is pretty much is working in the industry are incredibly talented artists, though, as well. So,
yeah. Do you think maybe it's just like a boredom thing?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be like, I have to get out of Ohio. There was the point when I was figuring out what it was I wanted to do, and I did know that the career that I wanted to pursue, I could get kickstarted in Ohio, but eventually I was going to have to leave in order to move forward. You know, because, you know, I grew up, it's a small city and everything. And Cleveland was probably the closest city to me that was a lot more, you know, connected with the arts and the cultural side of things. But eventually I was going to have to move out of that. I mean, things have changed, obviously, in the years that I've left, you know, and Cleveland is a very booming town, certainly with filming and, you know, theater and all of that sort of stuff is very big in Cleveland. So you could have quite a good career in Cleveland these days, I think. But at the time, for me, it was I've got to get out of this town because it's just, you know, I need to break out. I'm too big for this town.
I'm gonna be stopped.
Yeah, you know, I need to break out. So it's a little bit like that.
So in finding like what you wanted to do, I read this and you can confirm it for me.
Okay.
So you started performing as a ballet dancer, correct?
I did. Okay. Yeah, I started relatively young. I'm probably old for some people, but I think everything sort of began when I sort of became a teenager, when I hit sort of 13, 14. And I did my first sort of musical at 14, but I started training as a ballet dancer kind of along the same lines, or along that same timeline. And that just happened purely by fluke. I always enjoyed, singing and dancing, but in the level of which I was being just kind of doing it on my own. But once I started training with a local ballet company, and that only happened because a friend of mine was dancing, and I thought, oh, that looks like fun, and I just sort of realized that maybe that's something I could try and do. And I've always been sort of geared in that direction, not really ever knowing why, but I did, and I just kind of followed it, and it just became something that made me feel good about doing. And I thought, well, let's just see where this goes. Let's just, and then, people telling, oh, this is something you could do as a career. It's something, I was far too young to really think about stuff at that point. But I think somewhere along the lines, I was just on that path, and that's where I was headed. And eventually that's all I could sort of see. But yes, I did sort of train as a ballet dancer and dance professionally and stuff as well. Later in as years kind of went on.
How long did you do the dancing for before you...
Before I became professionally or whatever.
Yeah. So because you moved into theater and stuff after this, correct? But
I did. Well, theater, my first thing, like I said, my first professional job was 14 when I did a musical called Pearly, which is an amazing show. But I was a young sort of kid in the chorus. And at the same time going to school, and it was a summer program. And I started training with the dance side of it, pretty much, like I said, along the same lines. And dancing was always going to be, it was sort of like my first love. Singing was something I kind of did naturally, but really focusing on the dance side of things was something that I just really dove into, and it really kind of took me away to another place. Do you know what I mean? And it had so much discipline, and there was so much to learn about it. And ballet was the first love. I eventually got into other things like, jazz and contemporary and things like that. But ballet, even to this day, I'll go and watch a ballet, and I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking for, and its technique and its style and all that sort of stuff. And, and I just have such a love for it still, even though I don't dance anymore in terms of like that. I still have this great passion for, there are great artists that I love in certain companies. And I always, if I'm in New York, I'll get a chance to try and go and see a ballet or something like that. So, it still plays a big part in my life.
So from that transition, going from ballet into theater productions, you've worked with things like Cats,
yes,
Fame, Aladdin,
yeah,
Jersey Boy,
yeah. So my career spans over decades, pretty much. If I think about from the time I started, so all of those shows came a little bit later in life, but some of them a little earlier. But the transition from going, from strictly dance to musical theater, in that sense, I had to make a decision, because ballet, ballet is a completely different world on its own. But making the transition from deciding, okay, do I want to stay with ballet or do I want to move into musical theater? Because that's going to help me kind of feed both sides of my creativity. It allows me to dance, but it also allows me to act, and it also allows me to sing as well. So it was kind of getting the best of all of those departments. And I thought about it when I was in New York. I got offered a job with the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater when I was studying, and that was something I really wanted to do. And when I got offered a job with their second company, the director said to me, I said, so will I still be able to, audition for Broadway? And she's like, listen, once you join Ailey, it's a lifetime commitment. That's what it's about. And I understood that. And I had to make a decision thinking, do I follow this dream of being a dancer, and especially with something like an Ailey company, or do I follow the musical theater side? And I chose to go down the route of musical theater and do Broadway and things like that. So it just made it very helped me make that decision that you could still dance and still have all and fulfill all those things that you want creatively by following this one path. And that's what I did. And so from that point on, I was like, this is great because I love being on stage. I love performing. But I was getting to do it all in that one medium,
kind of a catch-all, like
100%. Yeah. So it helped me. It helped me grow in a lot of different ways. That dance, like I said, when I was studying ballet and dancing with the ballet companies, I did a company in Minnesota and the company back in Ohio. It's a completely different discipline. It's harder. It's much more focused. The style of it is very specific. The technique behind it is very specific, and you do have to commit the time to that. It is it's an ongoing thing. You're constantly taking classes, keeping your technique up, stretching and keeping yourself supple and and all of that. And it's wonderful, but it's a grueling art form in some ways. But I think the passion of doing it overrides that because what's required. It's like anything, whatever your profession is, whatever tools you need that helps you do the best job possible, then that's what you have to keep up. You always have to make sure that you are well hydrated. You have to make sure that your body's warm. You have to make sure you're doing the proper stretches and exercises in order to do the choreography that's presented to you. So it's definitely it was a big learning thing for me, and I think it helped me in the future. When things came to do other stage work or film work, it's something about that discipline, about knowing your body that stays with me, how you carry yourself and things like that. So for me, it worked. It was like a training ground for where I am today in some ways. It may work differently for other people, but certainly for me, right. I can certainly draw back on things of that really helped me.
Sure. Absolutely. I can definitely understand that. You're talking about the physical demands of ballet, and I've had some experience in theater, so I know that can be very physically demanding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest difference to you between the two performance types?
Between working sort of in the dance world and in sort of screen work, or?
I would say dance and stage theater.
Okay. So for me, the difference in, obviously, the dancing side of things is completely different in one respect, that I think you learn a piece, you perform it on stage, you interpret a story with your body through the movement of dance and the music that's being played. So, most people will choreograph and there's some kind of story they want to tell, and you have to interpret that purely through your body, not with any vocal, no dialogue, no singing, nothing. You just have to, your emotion comes from within through telling the story through your body. Whereas, in stage and theater, we have the luxury of being able to speak or sing and, with stage direction, tell the story that has been given to us in script form. And how we choose to interpret a particular character is down to the actor and, the director and or the writers and how they want this story to be conveyed, So there's a big difference, but at the same time, you are still performing live in front of an audience and you only have this one shot, unlike TV and film where, you can do other stuff, but you go out on the stage, and if you mess up, and you have to be able to carry on and get yourself out of a predicament, whether that is you miss a step or you forget a line or you forget the lyrics to a song. You have to find a way to carry on because the show doesn't stop unless it's an absolute, an emergency, or there's absolutely. So you just have that thing where the show must go on. It sounds cliche, but that's it. The show must go on regardless,
Absolutely. So you kind of mentioned how, again, you have like takes when you're doing film and screen, right? Would you say that's the biggest difference between stage and screen, or what are the biggest differences between those two?
The biggest difference, I think, is partly that, like I said, when you're on stage performing, so whether that's in a play or a musical or whatever, you step out onto, once the curtain goes up, that train leaves the station and it does not stop until that comes to a complete end, so you don't have the opportunity to go, oh, that was okay. Let me try that again. I think I can do that better. You have whereas with stage, you usually have anywhere between sometimes I've done shows in 2 weeks time where we've put it up, 2 to 6 weeks rehearsal period where you learn everything. You learn your blocking, your staging, your music. If it's a musical, you learn, how you're going to work with other actors or whatever the script is calling for. You have that time to learn all of that, and it's a ton of material to take on. And then once it's time for you to perform it, you have that one shot. Now, granted, most times you do a show, I'd say we're doing 8 shows. Professionally, we do 8 shows a week. But every night of doing a show or every performance is like doing it for the first time. One, because you have an audience who hasn't seen it, or maybe seeing it for the second or third time if they loved it that much. But you have to think that everyone out there watching it is seeing it for the first time. And every night that you go out there, you might be reciting the same show that you've done 4 shows prior, but it is doing it like it's new, because these people who are seeing it now is seeing it for the first time. And the show that they're getting might be slightly different to the show you did the night before. Maybe your emotion was slightly more heightened on that particular performance, but you get that one shot to do it, and hopefully you get through it and there's no flubbing of lines, or there's no, technical hitches or anything like that. But with the screen, TV and film, you learn your lines for that particular scene that's being shot that day, and you do it in blocks. You don't get to do beginning, middle, and end. You just go in for that particular day. What scene am I working on? It's going to be this scene with this particular actor. And it's 3 or 4 pages of dialogue, or maybe sometimes just 2 pages of dialogue. And, you can do it, and you get the chance to redo it again and again until everyone is happy pretty much with it, and you get various takes of it. And then at the end, it's going to be edited down in a way that you have no control over. That's going to be left to the editing department to put it together, to make it come across it the way. And that, and sometimes that can be several takes that you've done that they've spliced together to make a particular performance read. And it's still all you, don't get me wrong. It is everything that you've done, but they've taken the best from every take, or sometimes that one particular take will be what ends up on the screen. You never really know. But I think that's a big difference.
That's always been fascinating to me, the block scheduling of like screen stuff versus stage. It almost feels like feels like a little bit more raw, like.
Yes, yeah, and it's harder. I would say it's harder to do because you don't always know what's going to happen. And I say that because you also don't know what another actor is going to do. It might not be you who forgets a line. It might be the other actor on stage who forgets it, and you hopefully will be able to help them, to recover, if you can. So it's little things like that, but I think you rely on each other as a whole, as actors. You're in it together, so if something does happen, professionally, you want to be able to keep the show up and running, and hopefully, cover up any mistakes or anything that may have happened that the audience in some case will never know, because they only know what's being put in front of them. So if you forget a line or you skip over a passage of dialogue, if it just keeps going, the audience will be none the wiser. But if it turns out that you don't have the creative tools to help you through something like that, then it could possibly turn into a train wreck. You know what I mean? So you just always want to be on the front foot, I think, because anything can happen, especially in live theater. And maybe that's why I do love it. It scares me and terrifies me sometimes, but it's really where my root is in theater. That it's the majority of my work has come from that, and I love the feel of a live audience responding to the work that you are giving. It's instantaneous, whereas in TV and film you don't get that. You hope that what you've been able to do, it will be conveyed in the final product and that people will like it. Whereas we get instant gratification in theater. In TV and film, you don't get that.
Right. And looking at your pretty storied resume, theater and music seem to be a very big part of the early portion.
Oh, yeah.
And film and television were a later one.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a conscious shift on your part to transition?
I don't know if it was necessarily, I wouldn't say that it was a conscious decision. I think I went into the arts, and when I say that, I use all mediums, the singing, the dancing, the acting, the theater, the film. I went into it just wanting to perform. And things gradually sort of doors opened that I didn't necessarily see or aim for. My thing was I just wanted to be on stage and perform and sing and dance and act and do all those things. And although I thought of television when I was, in New York, TV was all in California. And I thought, well, California's not where I want to be. I want to be in New York. I want to be on Broadway. I want to be doing all of these things. This is where the grit is. This is where it's all about. This is where artists strive, and I felt that living in New York City. I felt like it was a constant grind, and I loved it. It was what the arts was all about. It was, whether they were, I mingled with other ballet dancers and other actors on Broadway, and our lives were exactly the same, even though we were working in different industries in some ways, but we understood what it was like to be in New York City, trying to live your life, doing what it is that you do. And it was gritty. It was everything you'd been told it was, and it was about trying to make it. It was about trying to survive. And so I think that still stays with me a lot, just in terms of my work ethic. But yeah, I think that it is an amazing thing to be a part of when I think about where things how they've come from the early days to where, my life is at the moment. But it's definitely, it's been challenging and still challenging.
And so what, how did you get into screen? So what was your first step into that world? So
it happened very gradually. I think it was little things. I mean, even from doing extra work in short movies or short films, and even so in New York, I was doing a little bit of extra work on some TV stuff. I think stuff that I would never, you'd probably never see me in, but you're just there and you're getting a sense of the cameras and the crew and the people around you. And I was thinking, God, this is kind of cool. But I didn't really shoot for that. I think it wasn't until I really moved to London where I started to do a little bit more, or certainly be in the position to audition for stuff. So it started to come around once I was still doing musicals. I think that sort of those opportunities started to come through my agent saying, oh, they want to see you for this. How's that? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'd learn the script and I'd go in and, I'd get it or not get it. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this is something I really want to do. And I think it was, I sat in on a table reading for a big casting director in London, Lucinda Sysons. And I went in for a table read. They just needed a reader is all they needed. And I sat and I went for a table read. And it was this film called Gambit, which I did nothing in eventually except be the part of this couple. But that wasn't given to me at that time. I was only gone in for a table read. I went in for this table read with Alan Rickman, Cameron Diaz, Colin Firth, Sir Tom Courtenay, and there were all these big people. And I sat in and I had several characters to read because I was just filling in. And we all sat around the table reading. And I had all these different characters. And I sat there and I was thinking, Jesus, I'm actually sitting here with all these amazing people who I know their work, and I'm just here reading, but that's absolutely fine. And everyone came up to me afterwards saying, "Oh my God, you were so funny, and it was great." And one of the producers said, "Oh my God, we didn't really realize," because they'd given me like 3 or 4 characters to read just to keep the story moving. But I decided I was going to come up with a different character for everybody, just to kind of bring something new. And everyone was so complimentary afterwards, saying, how funny this particular character was. You made me laugh. Oh, you really? It's a shame you're not doing the movie. And I'm like, it is a shame. I really should be doing the movie. And so it's funny because after that, the director, I think it was Michael Hoffman, who had asked, would I be interested in doing a role in the movie? And I went back in for the casting work and put some stuff on tape. But it was really a non-dialogue role. And I was with a friend of mine, and we got hired to do this. But it was just interesting being on the set, and the scenes were with Colin Firth and Alan Rickman and Cameron Diaz. But we're just this couple in the hotel and everything. And I thought, this is cool. And everyone was so lovely. And I came back to my agent. I said, after that reading, I said, I want to do more. I really want to do more. But I was an American also living in England, and there wasn't a great opportunity because, unlike America, who opens its doors to a multitude of races, and we've got people who can do everything over here. In England, it's like, if you weren't British or Caribbean or African, or there wasn't a great deal of work as an American on television there. Mm-hmm. Some of the films were okay because a lot of American companies would come and film in London. That was pretty normal, but it wasn't enough to sustain me in a living, once in a while of trying to get onto, a TV show that happened to be filming there from America. But for the most part, I think it was when I decided that I had to change my sights and finally move from London, which I never thought I did. And, I spent so many years living and working in London. And then to finally come to LA, I was like, I'm just, what? If it's what I want to do, I'm going to have to make that transition and go where it's going to be a much bigger pool, but the opportunity for me as an actor are going to be far greater to make that move. So I felt like I pretty much left an entire career behind to come to LA, to start over again, basically, because no one knew me here. No one knew, and LA's not a theater town. No.
We've heard that before.
Oh my God, it's not a theater town at all. So to come here expecting that was not the thing to do. If I went to theater, I'd go back to New York, but coming to LA was kind of like throwing my hat in the ring and seeing what was going to stick, basically. And I've been fortunate. I think things are happening, and it's, there's a little bit of a simmer going on, and I'm happy with that. And I'm, things are moving along gradually. And, London is always there. I still go back to work. I'm still working on projects that I deal with back in London. So I'm back and forth a lot. So I feel like now I've kind of broadened everything, and I have a bigger pool to work within. And so that's good. So that's very good.
I actually think it's really funny because when I was doing research for the interview, mm-hmm. I was seeing some of the stuff that you were in, and I realized that my little cousin who lives out there used to watch Go Jetters all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Which I think is really phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. I'm very proud of this show. I'm so proud of it. Yeah.
So is she.
Oh, is she an Ubercorn fan then?
Oh yes.
And it's crazy because when I left England to move to LA, that job possibility came up just as I was moving. I was in the process of actually moving. And I said to my agent, I said, why am I going in for this? I said, because I'm moving to LA. If this happens, that means, how's that going to happen? Oh, don't worry about it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Just go in, have a bit of fun. And I love the character for it. And I went into this audition. It was one of the voiceover auditions I'd gone into, and they came down and got me. I went up, they walked me into the booth, and through the window, there was at least probably 15 people in there listening to me. And at the end of my audition, I got the biggest round of applause. And I thought that's never happened to me before. And I thought, well, that was great. I don't know what's going to happen because, sometimes you always get great feedback after a show, after an audition, and you still never get the job. That's just what happens. But I moved to LA. And I think maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks I'd been here, and I get contact from my agent saying, so listen, it's 99.9% sure they want you to be Ubercorn in this new animation. And I was like, you're joking. And so we crossed the bridge, and eventually I was able to do it. And I was flying back and forth from LA to London to record all of it. And it turned out to be amazing. It was one of the best things I've done. And I'm so proud of this little character because, it's a preschool animation, but it made such an impact on parents and their kids because it's very educational, but also they incorporate this whole disco theme, so I couldn't be prouder to be the funkiest disco loving geographical guide ever. It couldn't have been more up my street. I absolutely love him. I love the character. I love what he stands for, and everything. And with who doesn't want a bit of disco thrown in on the side? I mean, he's wearing a 70s jumpsuit. He's got a purple mane with glittery red hooves, and he wears goggles, and he's a DJ. It's who thinks of that? Who comes up with that? And I think the kids love him, and the parents love him. I think the Go Jetters is now shown quite a lot around the world, and it's here in the U.S. now as well, which we're really happy about on Universal Kids and everything. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, he's making his way around.
So, the funkiest unicorn in all the land. We mentioned a little bit earlier too. You did some music. You have musical credits to your name.
I do.
There's some pop in there. There's some funk in there, but I think primarily what you've done is kind of like an electronic,
it's that sort of dance, Euro dance feel stuff. That sort of came about when I was working in Germany. So I moved away from New York to go do Cats in Germany. At the time, that was what, every singer dancer wanted to do, that musical. And I was on a waiting list for Cats Broadway at the time. And I'd gone down the street to West 72nd Street Studios was holding auditions for another production of Cats that was being done. It was the same sort of creative team, basically, but they were mounting a production, or they were recasting for a production that was in Hamburg, Germany. Long story short, I got this gig. I went to Germany. I loved it. I was very happy to be a part of the show. And eventually a friend of mine who said she was doing some backing singing, and asked if I want to do some backing vocals on an artist in Germany. And I went in, I started doing some vocals and stuff, and it was kind of fun. And one of the producers said, I really like the sound of your voice. Would you be interested in doing like a demo for me? So I was like, yeah, no problem. So we did this demo of some song. I can't remember what it was. And anyway, so he said, I've got another project and I want to try and get a deal signed. So at that time, they were doing what they called sort of CD singles or maxi singles. So they only released the singles. You never did like an album or whatever. So I did a few of those singles. Anyway, I got this deal. And he got me onto Polydor, and eventually another song came out, and we were onto BMG, RCA, working on different things. And one song just happened to go to number one, which was so unexpected. And it was a song called Let Me Be Your Love, and it was a dance track, and it was done with an Italian team as well. And then in Spain, I think it hits like 6 weeks. It was like number one in Spain or something like that. And I think people are slowly making the connection. I don't even know if the Death Stranding fans have made that connection yet, that there's because Tommie Earl Jenkins is what I go by, but Tommie Jenkins was what all that was listed under. So it'll be interesting to see how all that sort of comes out in the wash when people realize
It'll shake out.
It'll shake out eventually. Exactly. But I loved it, and it was great. And I had never experienced. I mean, I didn't realize. I went to Spain. This is crazy. So my real experience and sort of that quote unquote pop star kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Spain because they had offered me to come and do a performance on part of like a bill. It's like, those concerts, like the radio stations will sponsor a concert and every artist goes and, they're on the bill and it's like a party in the park and there's thousands and thousands of people. And I went and they picked me up from the airport and they were very excited, and the team. And they said, we're very excited. The concert's going to be great. And I think you're the last, you're on the last one to close the concert and everything. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And said the song was doing really well. Well, the radio countdown was on the radio as we were driving from the airport. And my song came on being announced as number one as I was driving from the airport to the hotel. Wow. And I was like, you have got to be kidding. Who does this happen to aside from, major artists? And I'm like, this was my first big foray into this sort of whole thing, going to do this concert. And it's like, and numero uno with Tommie Jenkins and Let Me Be Your Love. I'm like, this is so crazy. I'm actually in the car as the countdown they gotten to that point. And so I went and we'd done the concerts, and they said to me, can you maybe when you go out, can you just sing a little bit? We'll do some playback. We'll have some dancers and stuff. And, maybe sing a little bit a cappella so they know that it's you. And I was like, yeah, well, sure. And I didn't realize how many, there's like 20,000 people. For me, that was like the biggest audience I'd ever had in my life. And it was crazy. And I went out and I said, I sang a bit of the song. Don't let me go one more time. Don't let me blow out. And everyone just shouted, let me be your love. And I was like, that is crazy that they knew the song. And for me, it was like this wall of sound that came back at me, that they echoed the chorus of the song. And I was like, and then the music kicks in. I was like, oh, hell, let's party, man. This is crazy, and it was an amazing time to experience that, just to get a sense of, how big that is, or how big that was potentially could be. And I enjoyed that ride, and I still love doing music. But I'm at the point where now I'd like to do the music I want to do if I was to do something, and that was, I think at the time it was, you just did what the record label wanted. And for me, it was new and it was different. I was like, yeah, this is fun. It wasn't necessarily my bread and butter, because at the same time I was doing that actually happened. I had moved to London at this point, and that was still kind of going on, but I was actually doing Cats in London, funny enough, where it all began, when that concert came up, that I flew to Spain for that. It was amazing. It was great. I had such a great time, and I'm glad that it sort of did what it did, and it gave me an insight to that world a bit, which is also very different. So that's why I always feel like I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, where I pretty much have touched on everything in the industry to some degree, and just finding out where I sit, where I fit, where my niche is. But yeah, I loved it. I bet it's once again it's a completely different medium. The music world.
Oh yeah.
As a musician myself, I'm really interested to hear about some of the sounds and style that influenced other artists.
Uh-huh.
Were there any of those for you?
In terms of people that influenced me, I grew up sort of singing. I grew up in the church and all that stuff. There's, to the sort of age-old story with a lot of people. But, my taste in music is very eclectic. I love country music. I love R&B. I love a bit of hip hop. I love, Euro pop. I pretty much love it all. My collection of music just varies. There's not one style that I listen to, because I feel like there's a lot to be learned and a lot to just absorb from so many different type of artists, and to figure out what it is that really moves you. And certain music moves me in more ways than others. I love Panic at the Disco at the moment. I love it.
That is my favorite band.
I am so into them at the moment. I love what's going on, and I love the guys. I love his style, his voice. I love some of the lyrics and the storytelling that they do. But I still love, a bit of R&B and a little bit of gospel music as well. And I'm still in, there's a lot of stuff still happening in musical theater. There's some shows that are coming out. There's one or two songs from certain shows that are like, oh, that's a really cool song. That's really great. So like I said, I love music and I love, various types of it. And I'm always listening,
Yeah, that's how I feel as well.
And as a musician for yourself, do you have a certain style for yourself that you follow?
So I'm just a bass player.
Okay. Not
but
just
I'm really
a bass player.
Yeah.
Not just a bass player. The bass player holds everything, man. Everyone loves a good bass line. That's a serious position. That's a serious
If I'm
position.
doing my job well, everybody else looks good.
Yeah. Exactly. Because it's all about that bass.
Oh, for sure. But part of what I liked about being a musician was getting to tour. And you mentioned you were Europop, based in like kind of Germany, also in Spain. So did you spend a lot of time performing live in Europe?
Well, not in the music sense. I think most of my, I did the odd little live performance when it came to promoting the record or something that I was doing. So not a great deal in that sense, but a lot of work in theater and stuff. I've kind of traveled a lot more doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like performing in Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall, like as an American?
Oh my, I didn't realize how major it was until I was there experiencing that. I just happened, I left New York. First of all, let me just be clear. I loved New York with my very being. And I never thought I'd worked so hard to get to New York that I never thought, why would I ever leave New York? Everything I want is here. You want for nothing in New York. New York is a city. It's like, to me at the time in my life, it was like it was the central, place for everything revolved around New York for me. But when I moved to Europe, I had no idea. I was still young in my being, that I kind of thought, God, I'm going to Germany and I have no idea what it's about, what it's like. My only memory of it is what I'd read in history books, thinking, as Americans, we don't venture outside of America very much, and so I had no idea about what I was in for, but then I was realizing that, Hamburg was a very cosmopolitan city. It was amazing. And, I was expecting to go and see bombed out buildings and things like that. And I get there and I'm like, this is incredible. This is amazing. So I was there in November when the wall came down. I was performing Cats at that time in Germany, which was also all done in German. So I had to learn the show in German, phonetically. And during that time, it happened. And it was the city, because I happened to be in the West. That wall came down in Berlin, and it was amazing to see how many people flooded from the East straight into the West. I mean, they were welcomed. I mean, you'd see they drove these really tiny cars. It was amazing. I don't know how people fit in them. They were so small, but people would throw flowers at their cars because they were easily recognizable from being from the East, so people would leave, cuddly toys or stuffed animals or flowers or, gifts on their cars and stuff, welcoming them to the West. And it was pretty amazing. And that went on for quite some time. But the difference between seeing, when I went to Berlin, to see, where the wall is and was, where it stood, and to be able to see both sides, the west side of Berlin and the east side, it was like driving from Technicolor to black and white. And that's the only way I can describe it to you.
Wow.
Because the east side literally was so gray and so grim and so monochrome that it was literally like you'd been transitioned from, it's like Dorothy when you watch The Wizard of Oz and she opens the door. You've gone from black and white into this amazing color. And it was crazy. It was crazy. But you just realized how sort of downtrodden it seemed for all of that time. And the fact that, these people weren't allowed to leave, and I got a piece of the wall and, a little bit of that history. And it's amazing thing. I think not long ago, I think this past November, was it 30 years? I think it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it was celebrated. And I remember being there at that time, and it was crazy, but at the same time, there was this huge emotion involved with it. And I just felt like it was amazing to be a part of this historical moment. Although I wasn't directly connected to it, it was just being in that surrounding at that time.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I realized how major it was until I was in it,
Tear down the wall, let the color flow in.
I'm telling you, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've got one more question for you before we move into Death Stranding stuff, because this is a fun credit that I saw. We're a couple hip hop heads here on Metal Gear Mondays. And I think one of our favorite credits that you have is that you did staging and choreography for a couple Dougie Fresh music videos.
Oh my God, yeah.
What was that like?
Oh my God, that was still in my New York days. I remember it. And it's funny because Dougie Fresh at the time was big, but I think he was still rising. It was Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew. And his album, I think it was The Greatest Entertainer. And there were 2 songs on it. I think it was Cut That Zero and a song called DEF. And those 2, I was doing a production of Dreamgirls at the time. And one of the girls in the show was his cousin. And she said, and I was the sort of dance captain on this show as well at the time that I was doing it. And she said, my cousin, is looking for someone to sort of help, maybe help him with some moves and do some staging. And at that point, he didn't really have a choreographer or anything. I don't think like that. But he also wanted to just kind of get in a studio and, and stretch and kind of get in touch with his body, I suppose. And I said, well, my background isn't hip hop. I'm come from that sort of classical ballet and jazz contemporary background. And she said, yeah, but that's what he wants. He wants to kind of get used to, finding his body and the discipline of all that sort of stuff, something that was out of his comfort zone. And he bought a pair of jazz shoes and everything. And we went into the studio and, I would take him through like a warm up and stuff like that. And then we'd work on little movements, not, necessarily just little things that maybe he could, we'd find like a really cool move for him to do that he could insert at some point. Cause he was already a really cool mover, but he had his own style, but we'd find little choreographic things to slot in that maybe he could throw that move in every now and again or something or whatever. And it became a sort of like a once a week or every 2 weeks, we'd kind of get together and spend an hour or so together in the studio and all that. And he was really cool. We go up to Harlem, which is where he was living. And so he had 2 videos that he was going to do. And I think we tried to do them all over the course of 2 days, like knock them out. And so basically it was all, he had a director, but I was there for him to sort of, he'd have a moment where he's walking through something in the story. And I'd say, maybe try this particular move on that. So I kind of helped stage a lot of stuff. And there was, there's a couple of backup dancers who had some stuff that we'd also try and throw in a couple of moves. So it was fun. It was really cool. And, we did that. I stayed with him for a while. And even I'd done a thing with him at the Apollo Theater, and went and just checked on him, just to kind of work on little things. And it was good. It was really good until I moved away, to Europe. But yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And he's still going. He's massive. He's a beatboxer, man. He's still got his thing going. Yeah. Yeah.
Sam, we want you to go west and finish what Emily started. The people she left behind have been hard at work, setting up Cairo network terminals. But these terminals are still isolated. We need you to bring them online.
Death Stranding. This
a raison d'être.
Yeah, it's this whole experience that is Death Stranding.
Yeah.
We've been fans of Hideo Kojima's work from the way back.
Right.
So when he announced this several years ago, this game,
yeah,
it was such an intriguing sounding concept.
Right.
How did you find out about Death Stranding, and what drew you into doing the project?
Okay, so I literally found out about the whole project through my agent, and they contacted me. They obviously, the team had reached out to my agent saying they were looking for a particular character, and they had a breakdown about him and everything, and it was slightly different to what I was in terms of the breakdown for him. But for the most part, it was pretty close. Just some physical attributes that were slightly different. But they sent through a script, and at the time, he was just called. It was just the character was just labeled as Commander. That was it. There was nothing more about him. And they sent the script through, and I had to put it on. It sent through 2 scenes, I believe it was, and I had to do a self-tape. So I literally had to, get my setup and do the scenes and interpret it, because there wasn't much background on him. I interpreted the way I read it off the page. So basically my interpretation of the character. And that's how I became on board. But it went a while before they came back to me. I think it might have been like a month or so before I even heard back. So I practically dismissed it. I'm always doing so many auditions or self-tapes that it was just one that just kind of came in. I did it, sent it through, and I'll just wait. If I hear back, I hear back. If I don't, I don't. Mm-hmm. And they came back, and I was like, because it was so long coming back, when it came back, I was kind of like, wow, I didn't expect to hear back from that, just because I dismissed it. It had been so long. Anyway, they came back, and I accepted the offer and everything. And I knew and I'd heard of Metal Gear. So here's the thing. I'm not a gamer. Right. But I do a lot of work for games, and I enjoy playing them. But Metal Gear I had heard of, but the name Kojima I hadn't really been associated with, in terms that I wasn't knew his work very well, but I knew Metal Gear. And then when someone said, "Oh, he's did all of the Metal Gear stuff or whatever," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I didn't feel like the pressure of I was going in to work with some god in terms of which probably served me very well, because I'm very happy that I knew who he was after the fact, or and kind of became a lot more aware of like, now I get it. Okay, now I see. But by this point, I think my work had already been, in process before I was able to kind of realize the magnitude of this person that I was working with, who, for all intents and purposes, was a wonderful person and easy to work with and all of that. So that's how it came about. Literally, I got the audition, I self-taped, they offered it, and I started work whatever the day was that came through. And they, eventually sent me my scripts and what was going to happen. And I was excited because I had never done motion capture before either.
Mentioning like working with Hideo was a great experience. Can you give us some more detail about that? Like, were you in the room with him when you were acting?
Yes, absolutely. Every session that I did, he was, when it came to all the motion capture stuff, all the soundstage stuff, he was always there, directing the scenes and talking us through. I saw him, it was like seeing a friend every day when I would go in. And it was wonderful working with him because he's incredibly passionate about what he does. So therefore, you feel impassioned by it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Right.
But also you have to remember, you are telling the story of someone who has come up with this incredible story, these incredible characters, and you have to bring it to life. It's entirely up to you. So you don't want to, you don't want to be going down the wrong path, but he was there, and because he doesn't speak English very well, he probably speaks a little, but for the most part, he has a translator who translates everything, but it was interesting because I had never worked like that before. I'd never worked in a situation where I was working with a director who I wasn't able to communicate with in my native tongue. So what was wonderful about it was that I can read him in his eyes and his passion and his facial expression. So when the interpreter is talking and relaying, I'm not looking necessarily at the interpreter, but I'm looking at him as if he is saying it, if that makes sense. So I feel like I'm connected to him, but I'm hearing it even though he's speaking in Japanese, I'm hearing the translation, but I'm still focused on him. And it was wonderful to be able to do that and know that you're getting the thumbs up from him or whatever it was, but he was there every day. He would talk us through, we'd see the storyboard. I'd see the character, what the character was supposed to look like. And, and it helped a great deal to know that I was on the right track. And every day, if I had questions, I knew that I could ask the questions. If I didn't understand something, it would get explained to me, but it was amazing working with him. And I feel absolutely honored to have been able to share that space and to be able to work so closely with him in bringing Die-Hardman to life, and in the way that he had envisaged it, So that was, I felt absolutely honored by that.
Aside from the language thing, did it working with him differ any significantly from working with like a screen director, like a film director?
Not really. I think in some ways I felt like I had more contact with him because of it being his story and trying to make sure that character was right for him. I felt like there was a lot of dialogue between us. Sometimes on film sets, a director can just leave you to your own devices and just make sure that it's coming across on screen and let you do what you do as the actor. Not every director is like that, but I just felt like there was much more contact in a way of speaking and making sure we're on the same page, making sure that I'm giving him what he wants because it is his vision. Do you know what I mean? Versus, I suppose, getting a script and a director directing what the script is from another writer. Whereas here I'm working with him as the writer and the director. So it's all his versus a director who's just directing someone else's writing. So it was a little bit different, but in some ways it was similar, but I felt like there was a little bit more involved in this particular process because also you're working completely different. It's not like being on a movie set. You have to dig a little deeper, I think, with this project that we were working on.
Oh yeah. Kojima has done interviews and has kind of mentioned that he hopes that as people live their lives outside of the game in the months and years following, that he hopes they find the meaning of Death Stranding.
Mm-hmm.
So having been in the trenches, so to speak, do you feel you understand the meaning behind Death Stranding?
Yes, I understand it. I understand the meaning behind it, and I understand what it is, he was trying to convey, I believe, with, the whole strand and the connections of trying to connect our world again. I think it's very poignant. I think it's very current in our climate, in the world in which we live in at the moment. And I think his hope and his idea was that people would connect more. And I think that's what the game has done. I mean, you've played the game, you can see how that happens, where you're also able to see what other people have left behind in the game and, little signposts that they may have left, or giving you likes and things like that. And it is a way that, you feel like you do connect with people in a way that you probably haven't connected in any other games before. It is kind of a working together situation. I mean, you can choose to work as closely with or as little, I suppose, as, with other people when you're playing this particular game. But even outside of it, I'd hope that it helps people, even if it's just a small percentage. There were people, think about what they did in the game or what the game represents, and to be able to carry something into your everyday life, even if it's just for a moment, that you kind of have that little bit of a connection with someone. I think it's something that we've completely lost in our world at the moment, but hopefully we can regain that in some form. And I think this is, it's a way. It was certainly a great way to reach the masses by creating something like this in an interactive video game, where you can reach so many millions of people and very quickly by doing something like that.
Yeah, he had a very good vision for that kind of theming. Having worked with him and seeing his vision and things like that, do you think he would make a good transition to a film director?
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. I think he directs in that way. I think and he's got such an incredible mind, to come up with a story as, complicated. It's so complex, Death Stranding. It took a while for me to get my head around it because, we were fed information bits at a time. I never got the full story from beginning to end, and because there's so much that happens in between that story, and everyone else's connection within the story, so I needed to concentrate on my own stuff, and the people that I was working with. But then I'd find that I could learn more about other characters and stuff as well as time went on. But yeah, it's. I think he'd make an incredible film director, and I think he'd do very well with his stories. And I think he just has a mind that is so out there that it would be stuff that we would never even imagine. You never know what you're going to get from him.
Very eclectic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Tommie, you've had a few credits in video games with series like Fallout, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, all under your belt. But Death Stranding was the first time doing motion capture.
Correct.
So how do you feel about adding that extra layer? Does it change your process at all? And does it differ from doing screen, film, or theater?
I think I would say that the motion capture for me was closer to doing theater in a way than it is for screen. And there are elements of both. What I did find was that it was compared to, with a lot of the voice work that I've done for other video games in the past and things like that, you get your script, you go into a booth and you do the stuff and, and you play around with some things and create this character, but you have no idea what it's necessarily going to be like. You don't necessarily have a visual to work with. You're just working off what the director is giving you, and that's the character that they want. Whereas something like motion capture, when it comes to filming things like cutscenes and that, you know that it's going to be, in some cases, it could very well be your likeness, or it could be just a character that you're doing motion capture for. That could be an alien or some creature or something like that, but they want your body movement. But with this, it did add a layer, because for me, it was working, knowing that my likeness was going to be attached to this, but at the same time, it was also a medium that I hadn't worked in before, and I was excited about that. But at the same time, I had to dig a lot deeper than I had previously in some other film work or TV work, because I didn't have everything around me. I had to really dig harder with my imagination to imagine certain elements around me. You'd have a few props and things that you could use, but it wouldn't be like filming on a film set. But you have to still create and work as an actor the same way and approach the script the same way you would do anything else, which is what I always try to do. I always try to approach things from the truth perspective of the script in order to make it live as realistically as possible. And I think that's what I always try to do. And I think it's the best place to look at it, no matter if it's fantasy or science fiction or horror. I think the only way to do anything is to try and approach it from the truth perspective, from the dialogue. Do you know what I mean? And because that's what you want. No matter what you see, you want everything to be as real as possible, but take into consideration what the character is and how that character, what characteristics that particular character has, and try and incorporate that as well. So there's a lot of things to take on.
So it was untraditional in that sense.
Yeah.
Were you working in the motion capture studio with the other actors?
Yes. Yeah. So all the scenes that I would have either with Mad, and the majority of my stuff was with Mads or with Norman. And all of my dialogue stuff with them was done. All of our cut scenes were done together.
What is the setup and process for mocap like? So you record your lines while you're doing it, right?
Yeah. So it would literally be, obviously, you have the setup, the suit that you wear, you've got the dots on your face, you've got the helmet with the camera and the microphones and all of that sort of stuff. And so we'd go on the soundstage, and for whatever scene we were working on, we'd block the scene out. Hideo would say, I need you to go here at this point, and then maybe grab his hand on this point. However you feel certain things would work as you as the actor. He gave us room to also experiment with it physically for how it was going to work for us. And we, as the actor, can work things out for ourselves as well. But that was the process going on to that, working with little or nothing in terms of the physical props and things like that. You'd have, if you had a gun, you'd have a plastic thing that represented the gun, and sometimes it would be in the shape of a gun, or if you're on a vehicle or anything like that, they'd create something in the semblance of that. So you were always, it was very unconventional in terms of working on a film set, like I said, or a TV set. Whereas in this prospect, you are working purely with nothing around you necessarily in terms of that, using your imagination even more. But it was definitely a challenge, and it was definitely something that I would gladly welcome again, doing motion capture. I thought it was just amazing. And also, I think as an actor, it made me, in some ways, work a little harder.
Because you like having that challenge, right?
I do. I think when I have that thing that I kind of fear, everyone's just said, if it's something that you fear, go for it, because that's what's going to make things come out of you. You're going to dig a little deeper about certain things that fear you, if it's a particular scene or anything like that, it does make you go, I need to conquer this, because I need to, as the actor, tell this story, and I need to tell it in the best possible way that I can,
And so you obviously had a lot of lines in the game that were not accompanied by mocap, but for the motion capture stuff, did you spend any additional time in the booth doing ADR for that at all?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you would, if something maybe got a little muffled, or, the mic got a little scratch sound on it, you might go in and have to record something like that. But that was very rare on my part. And I did go into the booth to do, I'd still wear the helmet and a camera on for doing in-game stuff. So that was pretty easy, because that's, my character does have, diarrhea at the mouth in this game. He literally is talking, nonstop. I literally, because I've been playing the game, and I think I tweeted something the other day about playing the game and listening to myself talk. And I was like, even at one point, I wanted to tell Die-Hardman to shut up, because I was like, dude, let me just figure this out. Give me a break. And that was pretty crazy. Yeah.
Well, it was said that Die-Hardman had the second amount of highest number of lines
dialogue, yeah,
out of all the game's characters.
Yes.
So how long did you spend recording?
My journey with the whole process was over a year. It wasn't, because I wasn't in every single day. It was a process that took place over the year because of, how the gaming thing works. It's a long process, and I would have, 2 weeks in, then I'd have a month or two off, and I'd go back and I'd do something else in the studio. And they were usually, sessions. So for me, I don't know how many hours I racked up on it, but overall, the work on it went over a year.
Wow.
Yeah. off and on.
That's crazy.
You know,
That's crazy.
and that means I
Insane.
could have had 2 or 3 months where I didn't do anything, and then I get called back in for something. Do you know what I mean? So it just went on for a while. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
And so you have all these lines and all this motion capture done, right? So without going too deep into it, because it is such like a special scene, we had a lot of praise to lay on your performance, and there was a very specific one towards the end of the game in episode 14.
Right.
We credited on our episode when we talked about it as, I think, probably one of the best performances and performance captures we've seen in a long time.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was so emotional and powerful of a scene.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. What kind of preparation do you do for a scene like that?
Man, I'll tell you. So when I got the script for that and saw the storyboard for it as well, I thought, okay, this is a really powerful scene. Now it can go one of two ways. You can just kind of do it, or you can really dig deep and find it. And I had to think about the history of what had been told to me, what happened, with Cliff and I prior, and blah, 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 blah. And so all of these things, the whole story leads up to this point. And I think it's such a 360 for this character at this point, that there was no way I wanted to do it so much justice that I did have that fear factor, when I said, about, if you find things that you fear, really dig deep and go for it, because there's something to come out of that will make you stronger, or that will make you tap into something that you hadn't tapped into before. And that's what it did. And my preparation for that was, I knew the day that it was going to happen. And it was a long day. And I think that we left it to the end of the day, if I remember correctly. I think it was. Anyway, when I knew that we were going to do it, I had to take a moment, and Norman was with me that day. And before we started to shoot it, I was going through it myself, and I took myself to a corner, and I just kind of went through it all in my head, more about the journey of this particular monologue and where it needed to go. So I had to really think about the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. And how do I build the emotion through this? And what stays with me? Is there elements of anger? Is there elements of love? There's elements of hatred. There's elements of, vulnerability, all of these things.
Because he starts the scene very upright, like he typically does, and then it just...
Yes. Yeah. And I think for him, it becomes so personal that he is relaying this message to Sam, and the story that he is trying to say. For the first time, I think he is letting something out because he knows who he's talking to. And the history of what he has been through, and also how people have perceived him, up to this point. And I think he's just finding a moment that this is, everything has changed, without giving anything away. He's had a speech prior to that. Of what he's become and what he's taking over at this stage, and so it was by far the hardest scene I've ever had to do, but it's also by far one of the proudest things I've done, because I know what it took to get there, and I know how present Norman was for me at that point. And when we did it, I remember doing it, and everything, it became something more than I imagined it to be, because in the moment, something came over me that I could not control. And all I needed to do was stay with it and keep going, delivering my dialogue, and just let whatever emotions I was feeling at that time let that come to the surface. And what I tried not to do was stop myself from going too far. I thought, listen, if it goes where it goes, let's just see what happens. And I'm not going to stop myself from feeling a certain moment, because at this point, I'm telling you what this character is exuding from himself, and trying to explain a situation and what he feels. And so I just let myself go. And it was liberating. It was scary. I remember at the end of it, shaking uncontrollably after it. And I just needed to take myself away, because it went in one take. It all happened in one take.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. It all happened in one take. And we only did a second take because of safety, in case for any reason when they played back there was a sound issue, or there was something else, or anything that might have was gone wrong. We did the second take, and the exact same thing happened. The only thing that I remember happening in the second take once is that I think Norman's our headgear got locked, and my helmet sort of came off. I remember that, but it didn't stop. The scenes kept going. We didn't stop, and we just kind of, he was there to assist, and we just kept everything going. But the scene, after seeing the cut scene, I think some people have posted it online, and I watched it, and I remember distinctly thinking it was one scene all the way through. One scene we did. And I couldn't imagine splitting it up or cutting it or anything like that. It was just, I just think it needed to be, if you can get it, and there was no pressure on me to do it. I think even the dialogue that came from it, I think there were moments where there may have been an improvised moment, but I can't remember. I just know that the story was what it was, and the story had to be told, and emotionally it went where it went. But yeah, it was, by the end of that day, I think I got in the car and I rolled the windows down, and I had the music blaring up, and I was on the freeway heading back to LA, and because it was down in Marina Del Rey, I got on the 405 coming back, and I was just like, let the wind blow through the car, let the music play, shake it all off, because I literally, and it stayed with me for hours after that. It did. It stayed with me for hours after that, because I came home thinking, I don't know what just happened to me, but I felt like I'd been in a therapy session, or something. And that I was just literally spilling out my guts for, trying to tell a story, So yeah, it was incredibly challenging.
It sounds like you spent a lot of time with the character Die-Hardman, like building this character from your perspective.
Yes.
Do you see a little bit of yourself in Die-Hardman, or do you find it easy to divorce yourself from characters when you finish the day?
To some of them, I do, but I think what it is, I think I always find an element of myself that is connected to a character that I am playing, only because I think trying to bring elements of myself to a character makes it more real to me, rather than being someone that is completely far removed from me. Now, Die-Hardman is not a character that I say I'm remotely close to. There are elements about him. I feel like I'm a very organized person. I think he is a very organized and diligent person. But I have a much bigger fun factor to me than I think he does. But there is also the discipline within me that I understand, that I can draw from, that I think he has. I think he's a no-nonsense person, and I am very much like that. I'm pretty black and white when it comes to life in general and dealing with situations. It's either this way or it's that way. I don't think I try not to have any gray area. But I think, there's elements of him that are very vulnerable that we get to see. And I think it's also who I am. I'm a very compassionate person for a lot of things in life. And so I think that he is, and I think characters that I play have elements of those. So yeah, I think I can relate to him, but I think the ultimate side, I do try to leave characters behind when I've left them. But the only thing that stays with me is the elements of myself that I've given to those characters. But that's part of my own life, so that doesn't affect me so much. But I do try to leave the characters behind because I think that's where they should be.
Well, so then to follow up on that, let me ask you to think about your character in the future. I don't know. The game felt like it wrapped up in a very tidy way, but if there was ever going to be a hypothetical Death Stranding 2, what would you hope would happen to Die-Hardman in that game?
Hypothetically speaking, because that's what it is, I would hope that the character would somehow have completed the things that he needed to complete, and bringing the world back together again. And it's kind of hard to say with him because it seems like his, what happened with him and where he ended up, I feel like the door is left open because we could discover where he goes from that, and where his power lies, because that too could change, whether he becomes a fall from grace or whether he rises, up from the ashes and continues on doing other things. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see it, hypothetically speaking, if there was something like that, where this character would go. I'd like him to remain to be the guy that he is, but it'd be interesting to see, if there's a big switch in him, I have no idea. I think the possibilities could be endless, but it also depends on what would be true to the character. What happens to him, maybe something happens to him, that makes him become something else. I don't know. It could be anyone's tale. And if it's something that Hideo would write, God only knows what would come out.
Could be anything.
It could be anything. So, I'd be interested to see where it would go. I'd welcome it regardless because I know that it would just be something different to what he is. I don't know that people want to necessarily, if he was to come back into something, to return again. Well, let's return with something that would be, either completely different. Wouldn't want people to guess what it is that he would become or whatever. I think it would be something that is, we did not see that coming, and this is so cool. Because I think people have a love-hate relationship with him. Just being honest, I think people either are, and I think it was mainly because no one saw where his character was going. And because you don't really get him until those last 2 chapters, I think it is. But everything up to that point is like, dude, get off my back. I mean, you're really, he's just kind of by the book. This is how it is. Do this, do that. And I think people just think that that's, he's literally just guiding you through the game, and the fact that he does have, an arc, that people don't expect, and you have to get very far to see where that comes. So I think it is a surprise for a lot of people. I don't think they expect it, and certainly not to that degree.
Yeah, because I think initially, and this is something that we felt too, He is kind of a suspicious guy from the beginning.
Yes, yeah, I think he is. I think one of the moments I think people find him suspicious. I think it might be early on because, like I said, I'm playing the game, but I'm so slow because of the time that I have. I'm thinking I'm still in like chapter 3 or something like that, so I've got a hell of a ways to go.
Honestly, so are a lot of people.
Yeah, I've got a hell of a ways to go. But I think one of the scenes that, quite early on, I think when the president's in the hospital bed and Sam comes, I think we just kind of get this sense of mysteriousness about him. And he comes and he speaks to Sam. And, I don't know. I can understand why people go, oh, I don't know about this dude. I don't. He's wearing this mask. He's a little kind of aloof. And calling a little bit of the shots, and it's all of that. So I get that people don't quite know where he is or where he's. It's easy to be suspicious of it.
There's even a couple characters that are like, I don't trust Die-Hardman.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty funny.
I know. I did come across that at one point, and I was like, "Come on, dude, give me a break."
But what I will say is that, and I'm sure you know this, your performance, I think, is definitely something you should be proud of.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us and for taking your time out to talk to us today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, man. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant.
Absolutely. If you'd like, you can tell our listeners where they can follow you, and if you have any projects that you're allowed to talk about, please feel free.
Listen, it's Tommie Earl Jenkins. You can follow me on Twitter at TJ84. That's TEEJAYE 84, or on Instagram, which is Tommie _Earl Jenkins official. It's a little bit long, but you'll find it. Tommie Earl Jenkins official on Instagram, Facebook page as well, if you want to find that out. I do try to keep things up to date and posting and things like that. Projects that I'm working on at the moment, nothing that I can actually talk about, but just follow me on social media, and I will always post things when I can and give you the heads up. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for joining us. I guess that's all there is to say. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tommie.
No worries, man. Great to meet you guys. Thank you.
I feel you and I might have like a connection. Something.